My phone lit up with a group text from my mother. We've agreed. You're no longer part of the family. A heartbeat later. Brittany tapped a little heart on it like she was approving a purchase. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I opened my laptop and signed into every account I paid for. Rent transfer. Paused. Credit subaccount. Removed. Streaming logins. Revoked. Silence in the room. Clarity in my head. Anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. I typed one note for the morning audit complete. If they wanted separation, I'd give it in line items. Have you ever been erased by your own family and felt relief instead of pain? By midnight, the house was still. Just the hum of the fridge and the glow of my screen. I moved through each account like a surgeon working through scar tissue. The rent payment for Brittany's apartment, gone. I had sent it automatically every month for 7 months straight. $11,400 I'd never see again. The shared credit line where she just needed help building credit deleted. The family streaming plan where they watched their shows and never once said thank you canceled. Click. Confirm. Remove. I wasn't shaking. My hands were steady. This wasn't rage, it was math. I'd been the silent investor in their version of family, pouring resources into something that never paid emotional dividends. Tonight, I was closing the account. I checked the time, 12:17 a.m. In 16 minutes. The balance of power had flipped. I composed one final message. Not to them. Just a Venmo note. Audit complete. Then I sat back, watching the blue light fade from the screen. I didn't feel loss. I felt precision. It hit me that for years I'd called what I gave them love, but it wasn't. It was a subscription. And I'd been footing the bill. My compassion had been a luxury. They overdrafted without shame. Outside, a few cars passed. And I realized I could finally breathe without checking who needed what. No notifications. No guilt. Just clean quiet. I closed the laptop, shut off the lamp, and whispered to the empty room. Receipt don't lie. That night wasn't the end of something. It was the first accurate balance sheet of my life. The next morning, I couldn't shake the echo of that word family. It rolled around in my head like a debt I'd already paid in full. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected a new demand disguised as love, but instead, it was silence. The kind that tells you the message landed. I poured coffee and stared at the sunlight hitting the kitchen counter. And that's when the memory hit me, the dinner. The rooftop steakhouse. The night I should have known. It had been supposed to be a celebration. My parents' 40th anniversary. I booked the best table in the city. A place where the servers spoke in quiet tones and the menus didn't bother printing prices. I wanted one calm evening. One night where we could pretend to be normal. We were 5 minutes early. Caleb's hand small and warm in mine. He asked if he could order dessert before dinner. His shy way of saying he was excited. Inside, Brittany's family was already there. Her husband Tyler had a drink in hand. Her kids were loud. Screens flashing. Brittany didn't stand up. She just gave me a half wave over her shoulder and said, "Oh, hey." My mom hugged me like she was late for something. My dad stayed seated. Eyes on the wine list. No one even noticed the wrapped photo frame I carried for their gift. We sat. I unfolded Caleb's napkin and helped him with the menu. He smiled at the chicken tenders like it was treasure. I was about to flag the waiter when Brittany leaned forward, pulled the bread basket toward him, and said, "We didn't order for your son." She said it like she was doing me a favor. He blinked, waiting for a laugh that didn't come. My dad didn't look up when he said, "You should have packed him something if you knew he'd be hungry." The air went thin. Caleb froze, eyes on the tablecloth. My mother stirred her water. No one stopped it. That's the moment I understood how quiet cruelty works. It doesn't yell. It smiles politely while handing your kid a basket of bread at a table full of steak. It hides behind phrases like, "She's going through a lot," or "Don't make a scene." That's the trap when family excuses bad behavior because it's easier than accountability. I looked at Caleb's face and knew I couldn't play along anymore. I waved the waiter over and stood. My voice was steady when I said, "Cancel any orders not sent to the kitchen. And put whatever's been made on my father's tab. It's his anniversary." After all, you could feel the table stop breathing. Brittany's fork clinked. My mom's hand froze halfway to her glass. I added, "And my son will have the ribeye, medium rare, with truffle mac and a cola." The waiter nodded, like he'd been waiting his whole career for that moment. I sat down and handed Caleb a breadstick. He didn't say a word. But his eyes met mine. He understood. For the first time, I had stood up for him and for myself. The rest of dinner was noise, complaints, whispers, glares. I didn't care. The check came. I left the framed wedding photo face down on the table and walked out with Caleb's hand in mine. That night was supposed to be about family. Instead, it became my first lesson in silence, the kind that burns louder than any argument. The messages started before sunrise. Missed calls from my mom. A paragraph from Brittany. A voicemail from my dad demanding I make things right. They used words like embarrassed and ungrateful. None of them used the word sorry. I didn't reply. I made Caleb breakfast, packed his lunch, and drove him to school like it was any other day. On the way back, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I was studying them, almost like a case file. Every text, every voicemail, every tone of control masquerading as love. By the end of that week, Brittany posted a photo of herself and my parents at brunch. The caption said, "Family is everything." My mom commented with heart emojis. My dad liked it. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling that familiar mix of pity and disgust. Then I took a screenshot and made a new folder on my desktop. I named it Proof 1. Ling. That's when I started to understand the pattern. It always began the same way: a crisis Brittany created, a rescue I performed, an apology she never meant, and a reset where everything went back to normal. I called it the golden child loop. Crisis, rescue, amnesia, reset. Over and over until someone finally refuses to participate. Caleb felt the shift before anyone said a word. He came into the kitchen one night, small voice, careful, and asked, "Mom, did we do something bad?" I knelt down and met his eyes. "No." I told him, "We just stopped pretending." After that, I stopped checking family threads altogether. The silence on my phone was both eerie and clean. Every time Brittany posted another filtered happy family photo, I added it to the folder. I wanted a timeline. Something undeniable. The more I watched, the more the truth came into focus. They weren't shocked by what I'd done. They were shocked that I'd stopped playing along. Anger wasn't a flame anymore, it was data. I was building my own ledger of every slight, every manipulation, not for revenge, for clarity. Because once you start recording the truth, their fiction loses power. That was the day I stopped being their scapegoat and started becoming my own witness. The silence didn't last long. When Brittany realized I wasn't reacting, she shifted strategies. It started with what she does best: performance. A perfectly lit Instagram story, her in a cozy sweater, coffee mug in hand. A line of text across the screen, asterisk. Some people confuse boundaries with cruelty. Asterisk. No names. She didn't need them. Our mutual friends. Cousins. Even old coworkers sent screenshots like they were passing around evidence of a crime. My mother reposted it with a heart emoji. My father left a thumbs up. The family PR machine was back in business. At first, I laughed. Then I realized this wasn't random, it was coordinated. Every post, every comment, every silence had a purpose: to isolate me, to make me look unreasonable. I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Times Public Image Management. Asterisk. Inside it, I dropped every screenshot, every timestamp, every caption. I wanted a paper trail so detailed that even truth itself couldn't escape it. When I looked at the folder list, Proof 1. Ling. Financial transfers. Dinner incident. Public image management. It didn't feel petty. It felt organized. For the first time, I had structure. They thrived on chaos. I was building order. Then my dad called. I let it ring out twice before I answered. His tone was that mix of disappointment and superiority he'd perfected over the years. Lauren, you need to fix this. You're making your mother upset. By existing, I asked. By overreacting, he said. Brittany didn't mean it that way. There it was again, the family slogan. The phrase that had excused everything from stolen money to broken promises. Asterisk. She didn't mean it that way. I could almost hear the script flipping in real time. I was the problem now, not the pattern. I'm not fixing anything, I said calmly. I'm just done funding dysfunction. He sighed. You're always so dramatic. I didn't argue. Drama is what they needed to survive. Without it, they'd have to face the truth. And that's something they'd never do willingly. After that call, I stopped answering altogether. Every message went into an archive. Every accusation became documentation. I was no longer their daughter or sister, I was their auditor. A week later, Caleb came home from school, holding a drawing of a tree. The trunk was strong, but the branches were all separate, reaching in different directions. It's us, he said proudly. Just the two of us. I stared at it longer than I meant to. It was simple, but it hit me like a verdict. We were a new branch now, no longer connected to the rot. That night, as I tucked him in, he asked if Grandma was still mad. I said, maybe, but people who need control mistake peace for punishment. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than I expected. Then he said, I like peace better. So did I. I just had to prove I could keep it. A few days later, I sat across from my laptop again. But this time I wasn't deleting anything. I was building folder after folder. Every file neatly labeled bank transfers, screenshots, rent receipts, emails, texts. It looked clinical, like a case study of emotional embezzlement. That's when I called Julia. We'd gone to college together, drifted apart, and reconnected when I found out she'd become a lawyer. I told her everything, line by line, number by number. When I finished, there was a pause on the other end. Finally, she said, this isn't drama. Lauren, it's harassment. You need to protect yourself legally. I told her I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. Then start acting like peace has a process. She replied, documentation is dignity. Those 3 words changed everything. Within 48 hours, we drafted formal letters, cease and desist notices to Brittany, my mother, and my father. Each included copies of the proof I'd gathered their posts. Their texts. Their unpaid debts. The language was calm, factual, lethal. There was no anger in it. Just precision. Julia handled the filings while I handled my life. I changed Caleb's school records, locking down pickup permissions so only my Aunt Nicole, or my Uncle Ryan could sign him out. I had new locks installed on the house and a new will drawn up, naming them both as guardians. For the first time in years. I slept through the night without checking my phone. But the next morning, my inbox was chaos. Messages from Brittany. Furious. "You're blowing this out of proportion." She wrote. "It's family business. Not legal business." I didn't reply. Family business had been the leash. Legal business was the lock I finally turned. I called Julia again and asked if I was overdoing it. She laughed softly. "Lauren, they've been overdoing it for years. You're just finally writing the invoice." That line stuck with me. Everything they had called love my help with their rent. My babysitting their kids. My quiet forgiveness wasn't love at all. It was credit they never intended to repay. Now, I was collecting. Not money. Just boundaries. That afternoon, I printed copies of every letter and slid them into a binder labeled Paper Trail Protocol. I liked the sound of it procedural. Final. Unshakable. When I looked at the stack of pages, I didn't see paperwork. I saw proof that I could survive without them. This wasn't revenge. It was accounting. It was the clean math of self-respect. And if they wanted to test those numbers, I was ready to show every receipt. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the doorbell rang. Two women stood there in plain clothes. Badges hanging from lanyards. They said they were from Child Protective Services. For a second, I thought they had the wrong house. Then one of them read my name. Someone had filed an anonymous report claiming Caleb was being left home alone for long stretches. That he seemed withdrawn? That word withdrawn burned. It was the same one my mother used whenever I refused to argue. I didn't panic. I invited them in. Co. They checked the fridge, the pantry, the living room. Caleb's room was spotless. Books stacked. Clothes folded. They spoke to him privately. Came back, smiling. One of them even apologized as she left, saying, "We can see this report doesn't match reality." I nodded, but inside, I froze. Because now I knew this wasn't family drama anymore. It was warfare. I called Julia right after they left. She didn't sound surprised. "That's the warning shot," she said. "You need to lock it down completely." So I did. I spent the next 2 days creating a master file every Venmo payment to Brittany. Every rent receipt. Every message. I added photos. Timestamps. Even an old birthday card she'd written times. "Thanks for always being the stable one. I'd fall apart without you." Then Julia drafted 3 letters, one each to my parents and Brittany. Calm. Professional. Clear. The language made it obvious another false claim or online smear would result in charges. A week later, I got a bank notification. A transfer $2,850 from Tyler. No message. No emoji. Just the transaction. Then another text times I told her to stop. "I've moved out. Do what you have to do." That was the moment the story started to collapse from the inside. 2 days later, my Aunt Nicole called after running into my mother at the grocery store. She said Mom looked exhausted, muttering about how I'd destroyed the family. Nicole told her, "Lauren didn't destroy anything. She just stopped playing your game." After that, more stories surfaced. A cousin texted saying Brittany still owed her $600 from months ago. An aunt said she once drove 2 hours to rescue Brittany after a fight and never even got a thank you. The pattern was finally visible to everyone. I was just the first one to stop funding it. Then the last letter came. Not from them, this one had a law firm's header. My parents were filing for grandparent visitation. They claimed I was denying them access to Caleb out of spite. Julia read it and said, "They don't have a case. Arizona law won't back them. This isn't about rights, it's about control." That's when something inside me went cold and steady. They could use systems, but so could I. We filed a formal response, attaching every receipt, every CPS report, every message. We even added a school access restriction list. None of them could approach Caleb again. 2 weeks later, the petition was rejected. That night, I wrote one last letter, not legal, not angry, just final. Asterisk, this is the last time you'll hear from me. I gave you decades of chances. You repaid me with betrayal and lies. If you contact me or my son again, I will call the police. We are done. I printed it, mailed it, blocked every number, and deleted the group chat that had once been called family. The next weekend, I took Caleb to a cabin 2 hours north. No phones, just the smell of pine and a sky so wide it felt like starting over. He roasted a marshmallow, looked up at me, and said, "You seem happier." I smiled. I finally am. We sat under the stars, quiet and free. Some inherit money, some inherit chaos. I chose to stop the chain. Block peacefully, document relentlessly,